We're broadcasting live from the second floor of the Thornhill Community Shul. On page 876, we start Parshas Pinchas. So the first thing that's odd about this is how his name is spelled. If you look at the name in the title and the name in the first line, the name Pinchas has 5 letters. Usually it only has 4 letters, Pei, Nun, Ches, Samech, Pinchas. Here it's Pinchas. Right, with a yud. See a little tiny yud in the first line, like the 5th word in? So it says that the commentaries notice that there's not just a yud, there's a little yud. Like why? If you look in the Torah, you'll see that all the font, let's say, is the same size, but this one is off. It's like, imagine if you have a word like, it was the best of times. You're starting out a book, and the letter E in best is half the size of the rest of the word. So it makes you wonder, why would they do that? So here also you wonder, why is the yud smaller than the rest of the word? So, and also the yud is extra. You don't need the yud. The name Pinchas is usually spelled without a yud. It's usually Pinchas, not Pinchas. And here you add it. So the commentaries say the reason it is because if you split it up, it says Pi Nachas, which means that is my mouth. God is speaking. My mouth was the enforcer. In other words, that God gave the rule that says that he's allowed to do what he did, right? That caused everything that happened. What did he do? So it tells you, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron a Kohen, Pinchas the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron, who was a Kohen, turned back my anger from the Jewish people because he was zealous. What does it mean? So I'll just review the story. We said it the last week. The story is that when Bilam comes to curse the Jews, right, and he fails, he can't do it. But he says to Balak, who hired him, he says, listen, there's one surefire way that you can curse the Jews. I wasn't able to do it. My job was to try to find that one moment when God's mad at the Jews and I was going to curse them then, and God would do it. I couldn't do that. So I'm going to tell you another trick. The trick is that the God of the Jews hates immorality, right? Sexual impropriety. He hates it. And if the Jews do that, then he gets angry at them. So what you have to do is get them to do it. And then they'll be angry, and then you can go to war with them and you'll beat them. So he says, well, what do he do? So what it says is that Bilam instructs Balak that he should go and find a way to get the Moabite women to seduce the Jewish men. Because now what's happened is the Hebrews, right? They're not really they're Jews, right? They've come in. The nation has come into this land where this other nation lives, right? The Moabites and the Midianites, they live there, and so the Jews have to live. They're living there. They need to buy things. They need to buy food, right? They don't have land. They're traveling, so they got to go buy wheat. So the men go into the market. So what happens is that they go into the market and they have this big street with all these little shops, just like you have like in different cities. And so what they did there is they got the older women to run the shops because they couldn't go pick the fruits and vegetables. It was hard for them because they were older. So, and also they were less threatening to the people because they were older people. So the men would come and do business with them, and there was no sort of sexual friction because these are like women, like their mother's age. So you're not going to have the same type of thing. So what would happen is the men would come and they'd say, okay, I'd like to buy some wheat. So this is the old world. You don't just, they didn't put a price on it. You negotiate. So you want some wheat? Well, it's $10 a pound. Well, $10 a pound. When I was over with that other country, they only charged me $2. Well, okay, I'll give it to you for $8. How about $3, $6? And we're going back and forth. So the woman says, listen, it's hot out here in the sun. Let's go inside in the back, and we'll negotiate the price. So the man's not afraid of going with this older woman. What's she going to do? So he goes in there, and the woman has sit down, have a drink, and they're going to negotiate, and the woman walks out of the room, and in comes these young girls, and they seduce the men. And because this happened, the men got involved in all types of things they shouldn't do, and God got angry, and he sent a plague to destroy the Jews who were involved in this. And then it says what got worse was that not only did they do this, but they got one of the princes, because the Jews had the head of every tribe is a prince. They got him, and he went and he got a hold of a princess from Midian, and he was having relations with her in public, right in front of everyone, because they're saying, he says to Moshe, you say we're not allowed to have relations with foreign women. well, not only am I going to do it because everyone does it, but I'm going to do it right in front of you. I'm going to show you. I don't care what you say. And he goes right in front of like hundreds of people, and he has relations with this. He's a prince, she's a princess, and they think because we're who we are, no one's going to do anything to us. So Moshe is aghast, like he doesn't know what to do. The Torah tells us he's like shocked. I mean, you imagine he's like in a court, right? And it's like a religious court. The people do this. He's just dumbfounded. And this fellow Pinchas decides that he knows the rule is that if somebody does something that is so immoral, like they're doing, that a person who's jealous for God, right, who's truly for the right reason, is allowed to kill them. That's the rule. That's what the Torah says. It doesn't say it in the Torah. We know it from this line. And so he jumps up and he kills them. And the plague stops. And that's where our parsha begins. Right at that point, where now what's going to happen to Pinchas for killing these two people. So, but there are many points that are worthy of understanding. Which, for instance, how is it that Moshe just stood there dumbfounded? Right? The real question is like this, because if Pinchas knew the law, and the law was that a zealot can kill these people, how do you think he found out the law? Where did he get it from? There's only one source for all of the Torah, and that was Moshe, which means Moshe knew the law. And Moshe had to tell him. At one time in his life, Moshe had to say to him, listen, this is the law. If something happens and it's immoral, and a zealot who has the passion of God in him is allowed to kill the people. Right? You can't go and ask a question. You can't go to court. As soon as you do that, you're not a zealot. A zealot can do it. That's it. Other than that, you have to go through the court system. So how does he know this? Moshe had to tell him, because Moshe told all the Torah. People didn't know Torah except for the Torah that Moshe taught them. So Moshe had to know the law. And so we have to ask that question: why is it that Moshe didn't know the law, but he knew the law? Right? So that he does this. And this is right. So here, this begins our parsha. So it says what happens, that Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron, turned back my anger. God says, I'm not angry now because of what he did. I'm going to stop the plague from the Jewish people because he was jealous on my behalf. And then, before we go on, we have another problem with this statement. Usually when they introduce somebody, they introduce a person with their name and their father's name. Right? And like my name is Avram Yehuda, my father's Asher Chaim, I'm Avram Yehuda ben Asher Chaim. Right? I'm not my father's name, my grandfather's name, my great-grandfather. You only need my father's name. My name and my father's name, and then you know who I am. By a person having their name and their father's name, it's like having a last name, so you know who. Right? So that's how they can tell here. So he says that he has him, and he has his father's name. Now it tells you his grandfather's name. Why does the Torah tell you his grandfather's name? It says he is Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron. Right? So Aaron, Moshe's brother, was his grandfather. His father was Elazar, the son of Aaron, and he's the grandson. Well, that's very nice. So why do they have to tell you that? Because the Torah shouldn't have to tell you. First thing is you could figure it out, because Elazar is Aaron's son. But why here does it break the rule and say, we're going to tell you his father and his grandfather? So there's a number of reasons. But one of the reasons it says is because people looked and they saw this guy Pinchas take a spear and kill these two people. Now maybe he's justified in doing it, but who would do such a thing? Can you imagine if you're justified in killing somebody? You're allowed to kill this person. Right? It doesn't mean that you'll do it. It's gruesome. It's violent. It's ugly. It's painful. Right? It's one thing to say, okay, you have to do it. It's the right thing. Sometimes you have to go to war to have peace, but nobody wants to do it. And this guy jumps up to do it. Right? So he's got to be a bit of a bloodthirsty guy. Maybe he's bloodthirsty for the right reason, but he's got to be a bit of a bloodthirsty guy. It's like, they used to have back in the 30s. They had Jewish gangsters. I read a book about it called "And He Was Good to His Mother," and it's all about these Jewish gangsters and what they were like as people. So some of these guys were like sociopaths. They had no conscience, right? They could, whatever they had to do, they would do. So for them to kill somebody, because they were sick. So right, some of them would actually, instead of telling someone to do it for them because they were the boss, they would do it themselves. They would kill people themselves when they didn't have to. And it showed you that they liked it. Right? This guy Pinchas kills these two people. Right? He jumps up right away and he does it before anybody else does it. So maybe he's a little bloodthirsty. He's a violent guy, and he's just violent in the right way. Right? It's not so bad to have a violent guy as long as he's on your side. Right? so maybe it's not so bad. So the Torah tells you that's not the case. The Torah says, who does he go after? Where does he get his traits, his personality from? So he had two grandfathers. Right? His father was Elazar HaKohen, Elazar the son of Aaron. But who was his mother? He also has a mother, and she has a father. Right? So who's his mother and who's his grandfather? So his mother, right, was a daughter of Yisro. Just like Moshe's wife was a daughter of Yisro. So Elazar married a daughter of Yisro. Aaron married into the same family as Moshe. So she has a son. Now, who was Yisro? Yisro was an idol worshiper. He was a pagan. And pagans are violent people. Pagans don't follow the same idea of what is moral as we do. They don't consider human life sacred. So they'll kill people and they don't think anything of it, because everything for them is destiny. It's all idol worship. So if you wanted to tell me that Pinchas took after his grandfather Yisro, now I know why he killed those people, because he's bloodthirsty. The Torah tells you that's not the case. The Torah says Pinchas is the son of Elazar and the son of Aaron. Aaron, who was he? He's known as a peace lover. Aaron loved peace. And this guy's not, that's not peace. He killed two people. But the Torah is telling you that this was the trait of Aaron. That he had peace, and he pursued peace because this is peace. Sometimes in order to have peace, you have to do something violent. Sometimes you have to do that. You have no choice. When I was a kid, they used to say, how can you declare, go fighting in order to make peace? It makes no sense. If you want to have peace, make peace. Just put down your gun and you'll have peace. But it doesn't work that way, because both sides have to put down their gun. Because if I put down my gun, they'll just kill me, because they're not putting theirs down. So if you want to have peace and somebody's being an aggressor, the only way you're going to make peace is to fight them and make them be peaceful. And then you'll have peace. Right? That's right. So here, Aaron is the peace lover, and he has and he is a grandfather, and he says, you want to have peace, right? You have to fight for it. So here, Pinchas acts the way he does, so that they should go and have so that they should have peace, which is not the trait of Yisro, it's the trait of Aaron. And that's why the Torah goes out of its way to tell you who his grandfather was. So you should know that this idea of peace by killing someone is appropriate in this case. That's why it tells you. And then it goes on, and it says, what am I going to do about this, God says. So, L'chein emor hineni nosein lo es brisi shalom. He says, we can get you a chair if you want. Sure, because it's right across the hall. All right. He says, I'm going to give him my covenant of peace. That's what God says. So again, you have to wonder, the guy killed somebody, right? So give him the covenant of zealotry. He's a zealot. Give him, right? What do you mean, the covenant of peace? What he did was not peace. It was murder, right? But he gave him the covenant of peace because, you see, when a person does something, your actions have an effect on you. For instance, if you talk to a doctor, most doctors will tell you that when they started out, that was me, when they started out and they had to go do a surgery, like in medical school, they would throw up, they'd pass out, they'd get sick. They certainly didn't like it. But after 5, 6, 10, 20 times, they think nothing of it. So you used to say, how could that be? Here you're watching a person, even though it's for their best, you cut them open, and you do all the stuff to them, right? You inflict pain on them, you do all kinds of things to them, and of course you're making them better. But you have to do all that. That's a violent thing, and that's gruesome, and it's ugly, right? So how do they get used to it? The fact is that that's how we are. Our human beings are created to get used to anything. We can work at it and get used to things. So a person who goes and is a doctor, the first time he's going to get sick. The second time will be a little queasy. The third time is nothing. After that, he's able to go and cut up a person to help him without at all feeling bad about it. Right? Well, the same thing as with blood. The first time, if you injure somebody, if you hurt somebody, the first time you do it, you're horrified. How could I have punched that person, hurt them, cut them? You're horrified that you did it. The second time it bothers you. By the third time already, it doesn't bother you anymore. You're used to it. So here, every time you do an action, it has an effect on you. So here, Pinchas goes and he kills these two people. So it has an effect on him. From now on, bloodshed is not going to be so hard for him. But God says, no, I don't want that to happen. This person, he went and did what he did, not because he wanted to shed blood, because he stood up for me. And therefore, I'm going to give him a covenant of peace so that he will not get used to this. So he'll always want to be a peaceful person who has to do these things sometimes, but he'll never get used to it. It'll never be something that he won't care about human life. He'll always care. So that's what it means by Bris Shalom. But if you look in the Torah, and that's why there's a dot over the word Shalom here, the letter Vav, the third letter, is cut. Usually in a Torah, a letter has to be perfect. Here, the letter is cut. So if you look at it, it's like two yuds on top of each other instead of one long Vav. And the commentaries all ask, why is it cut? So there's a number of reasons, but the most simple reason is because the actions of Pinchas created shlemus, created completeness. Because right now the Jews and God were not seeing eye to eye, because the Jews were doing inappropriate things, and God made a plague to kill them. So he comes and he stops the plague by causing the Jewish people to stop doing what they're doing and to punish the ones who did things wrong. So he caused peace, and he made it whole again. And the word shalom without the vav is shalem, which means whole. So that's what he did. So that's one of the reasons why that vav is there. But another one is that it says that the letter is vav is cut to remind us of a story from the book of Bereshis. In the book of Bereshis, it says, they say here, you know why the shalom was cut? The reason is because the letter is cut is because because there was a machlokas, a fight, and the first time that there was a fight in the history of the world, right, when there was a fight, it was not considered good. How is that? There's one day out of the days of creation. God says it was evening, it was morning, and God looked at everything, it was good. Right? One day he doesn't say it. And I believe it's the second day. He doesn't say that it was good. And why was it? The Talmud says because that's the day that fighting came to the world. Machlokas came to the world. And that's not good. So what do you mean? Separation, right, came to the world. Because he separated the upper water from the lower water, and therefore the separation comes to the world on that day, and God says separation, right, fighting, by separating ourselves from each other, is not good. So therefore he couldn't say that day was good. But that's not true, because right in the first day, God separated light from dark, right? So that's not the first time he separated was not the upper water and the lower water. It was light from dark. So why does it say that? So the Talmud says that the commentaries say because when he separated the water from the water, he separated two like things. To separate dark from light or good from evil, there's nothing wrong with that. You need to separate good from evil. But to separate water from water is like separating people. That's not good. It has to be, you can't separate the same thing. That's where they were unhappy. And here the word shalom is cut to remind us of that story, that it's sometimes, right, there is a separation between people. Sometimes that separation is very bad. It causes all kinds of fighting. There's differences, there's racism, bigotry, and so forth. Sometimes it's necessary. And when you're fighting good against evil, here it was a fight of Pinchas understood it was good against evil, and so therefore the word shalom shows you that he had to resort to fighting, but it was ultimately for peace. And then he says, "Vayisa lo lazaro acharav bris kahunas olam." And then God says, "I'm going to give him a gift for him and for his children that they should be kohanim." So you think first thing is you think he already is a kohen. He's a grandson of Aaron, and we know Aaron and all of his offspring are kohanim. However, the rule is that if Aaron had children or grandchildren and they were born before he became the kohen, before Aaron became the kohen, so then any of those children were not kohanim, because it's supposed to be Aaron and all of his children from that point on. So Pinchas came from Elazar, who was born before then, so Pinchas wasn't a kohen. But God wanted them to be a kohen. So God says, because of what you did, I'm going to make you a kohen. Because of how you stopped these people from doing what they did. Now you say again, it doesn't make a lot of sense. A kohen is a person who dedicates himself to working for God and bringing peace to the world. That's what a kohen does. He offers sacrifices and so forth. So why would you make somebody who does something violent into a kohen? He doesn't show the traits of a kohen. He shows the traits of a violent person, even if the violence is for the right reason. So here the answer shows you that he was given the idea of being a kohen specifically because he was violent for God. Because here he truly was violent just for God, not for himself. They say that there are two ways, that times a person needs to strike back. Sometimes somebody will insult you. right? And you have to respond to them harshly. You can't just simply let people walk all over you. You have to be humble, and you have to try to get along, but you shouldn't allow people to abuse you. And sometimes it'll get to a point where people, right, they'll abuse you terribly, and you have to stand up to them, right? That ability to stand up to somebody is a necessity, because if you stand up to them, that's what makes real peace. That causes peace between the two of you, so you'll both see eye to eye, and by having peace between people, we have peace with God. And a Kohen, that's his job. A Kohen's job is to try to influence people to have peace among themselves. And therefore, it's perfectly logical that Pinchas, who was prepared to be violent for the sake of peace, should live his life for the sake of peace. And therefore he should be a Kohen. And that's what happens here. Now, to answer the question we asked earlier, which was why is it that Moshe didn't know the law, but Pinchas knew the law, when there's no way Pinchas could know the law if Moshe wasn't the one who told him. That's the only way he would learn it. So then Moshe must have known the law. So the answer is that that's true. Moshe knew the law. But God purposely made him forget the law, so that Pinchas would be able to jump up and do what was right. Even though Moshe knew it, and Moshe could have jumped up, God made him forget it at that moment. And the reason he made him forget it was because God wanted Pinchas to become a Kohen. It was important that Pinchas should be in that role. However, he couldn't just make him a Kohen. He had to cause things to happen. But what you have here is that this is an example where God does 100 subtle things, 100 things, and in the end of it, it was all done in order so that this X, whatever X is, should be accomplished. God wants let's say a woman to get married. That's to marry a certain guy, but this guy is in Florida and the woman is in California. You're not going to meet each other. So God makes all of these things happen and change and change and change and develop. 100 different things happen. Somebody doesn't get a job and they move to a different city and something else happens. So that all of these things happen to people. The end result is that these two people should meet each other. He goes through all of these different things just so they should meet each other. Right? Why? Because when God wants something to happen, he causes all these subtle miracles to happen, and then it happens. So here God caused that Moshe should forget the law, so that Pinchas would remember the law, and Pinchas could become a Kohen. Right? He caused all of that to happen, so that he would be able to logically make Pinchas a Kohen. And that's what he does here. And then it goes on at the bottom here saying, right, and the name of the slain Midianite woman was Cosbi, the daughter of Tzur, whose father was a prince. Now Hashem spoke to Moshe, harass the Midianites and smite them, for they harassed you through the conspiracy, and they conspired against you in the matter of Peor, in the matter of Cosbi, who was slain on that day of the plague, in the matter of Peor. All right, so it says, now go. God tells Moshe, go out and punish the Midianites. The Jews should go there and seek retribution, because the Midianites did this to you. They purposely seduced the men so that I should get angry, and they caused this to happen. Right? What we knew was happening, as I told you, the Jews didn't know. They just thought that they were just doing wrong. And really, God said to them, no, the Midianites planned this for you. They set you up, that you should fail, and then I would get angry at you, and then they'd be able to get rid of you. So since it was all their fault, I want you to go and harass the Midianites. Because normally we'd have a problem. You see, Midian, in this case, is a nation that we really have nothing to do with. But what happened here is that Midian conquered a nation called Moab. Moab is our relatives. Remember Lot? We talked about Lot. Lot was Abraham's nephew. So Lot goes off to Sodom. He goes to Las Vegas. He lives there, right? He's there, and it says that as far as he knows, the world has been destroyed when God destroys Sodom, and there's no more people except for him and his daughters. So him and his daughters commit incest, and the girls get pregnant. One of them gives birth to a baby called Moab. Moab is now a son of Lot. Lot is a nephew of Abraham. We're the relatives of Abraham, so the Jewish people are related to Moab. However, Moab is very sexually improper. It's known. The nation acted in such a way. But God says, because they're related to you, you can't attack them. You have to treat them nicely. So now what happened is the Midianites conquered Moab and took them over. So now, are we unable to attack Midian because the Moabites are there, or now we can attack Midian and Moab? So God's telling you here, you can attack Midian, even though Moab is a part of it, because they conquered them, they took them over. That's what. Okay, so now what happens is that they're told to take a census. And it goes on for the next 3 or 4 pages, where we go through each tribe, and the names of the different people in the tribe, and how many there were in each tribe. And it says that all of the Jewish people were 601,730 people. That's how many were there as of the day after the plague that people were killed because of the story. And then what happens is that they get visited by these women. Moshe gets visited by these women, the daughters of Tzlachad, beginning on page 887. The daughters of Tzlachad are part of the census, but their father was dead, and they had no brothers. So they find out that according to the rules that they've heard, that God gave a tribe, every tribe got land in the land of Israel. So it went after the father. The father, whatever tribe the father was in, they got land in the land of Israel. Now, these daughters of Tzlachad, they have no brothers, and their father died. So there is no father, there is no male in the family. So they go to Moshe and they complain. They say, what's wrong with us? We want to inherit the land also. We want to inherit the land of Israel, and we have no father. So Moshe doesn't know what to do. He goes to God and he asks them, what should I do? God tells him, you should give it to them. The women deserve to inherit the land also. So he gives it to them. And that's what the story here, where these daughters of Tzlachad do that. Now this is an amazing thing, because the world today wants you to believe that women, especially observant Jewish women, are docile. They listen to everything their husband says. Their husbands push them around and abuse them, and that they basically will just roll over. They'll do whatever you want. The women are not going to stand up to you. So anybody who has 2 eyes knows that that's about the opposite of what Jewish life is like. Jewish women, and throughout history, have been celebrated because they don't just listen to their husbands. Even Abraham and Sarah, God tells to Abraham, you better listen to Sarah, your wife, because everything she says is correct. What God tells him. Right? Tells him right in the Torah. Listen to your wife. Everything she says is correct. So, the women have been opinionated. They stand up for what they believe. They don't just say whatever you say is okay. Right? That's not the Jewish way of doing things. And the daughters of Tzlachad were the same. They're listening to all this, and they find out we're going to have nothing. We're going to go in the land, and we're going to get married. And when we get married, so then we'll share our husband's land. But it's sharing his land. We don't have any land, and we should have land. We went through everything. We went through Egypt. We went through the desert. Our father died, and because our father died, we didn't have any brothers. We lose. So they stand up for themselves, and because of it, God gives them the land. So they're given land. A woman can inherit, so she inherits because her father died. Now, interestingly enough, when they speak, they say, our father didn't do anything wrong, but he's dead, and we want to inherit his land. So it says that he was loyal to Moshe. That is to say that their father, when it came to the story of Korach, when all these people went and they stood up to Moshe and they wanted to take over, right, with Korach, they tell him, our father wasn't one of them. Our father's always been loyal to you. Because it says then that Moshe doesn't give him an answer. He doesn't tell them, should you get the land? He goes to God and he asks God. So he says, well, why didn't he give him an answer? And then why, if he didn't know the answer, why didn't he go to the court, the Jewish court, and ask them the answer? So the point was that Moshe didn't want to answer them themselves, because they told him that our father was loyal to you. And he felt that he was now like bribed. Not on purpose that they wanted to bribe him, but a person who's bribed cannot give a fair sentence. And a person who feels, like when you say to me, our father was loyal to you his whole life. So that's a bribe. That makes me feel, you know what, these people, they stood up, their father died for me. The least I can do is give them their land. Right? So Moses says, you know what, I'm not thinking straight. So I'm not going to answer the question. And he goes to ask God. But that's not the way to go. You're supposed to go to the 70 elders. If Moshe didn't know, the 70 elders would give you an answer. But he doesn't go to the 70 elders. And for the same idea, because the 70 elders, also, they're about to go into the land of Israel. and they're going to lose their authority, because as soon as the Jews go into the land of Israel, the elders aren't in charge anymore. So they may give an answer that would give them more power, and therefore Moshe doesn't go to them, and he goes directly to God, so that there will be no question that the answer he gets is correct and it's not biased. And that's why he doesn't answer himself, because he knows the law. But here he goes in and that's what he's told. We next have that on 888 and 889, we have that God tells Moshe that you're going to die. He says, right at the top of the page, Hashem says to Moshe, go up this mountain of Avarim and see the land that I have given to the children of Israel. You shall see it and you shall be gathered into your people. Go see the land of Israel and then you're going to die. Gathered to your people means you're going to die. Now, don't you think it's a little bit cruel? Listen to this. Here, Moshe, right, gives up himself, becomes the leader of the Jewish people. You're the greatest prophet, the closest person to God there is, and all he wants is one thing, to finish the job. He wants to be able to bring the Jews into the land of Israel. That's what he wants to do. And God punishes him for hitting the rock, and you can't go into the land of Israel, right? So what does God say? Now I want you to go up on this mountain, and I want you to look at the land of Israel. Like, why? You want to make it worse? He should feel bad now? Right? Okay, I can't go. I'm going to pray that I should go. I want you to let me go. You're not going to let me. And we know God doesn't let him go, no matter how much you praise. But nevertheless, God tells him, go up on the mountain and look. Like he's being cruel to him. So it says that's actually not the case. This teaches us an important rule about who Moshe was. You see, when the Jewish people enter into the land of Israel, if we act correctly, we have a covenant with God that he will take care of us and we can keep the land of Israel. If we don't act correctly, he's going to stop guarding us, and the world, who before didn't care about the land of Israel, now does, and they're going to take it away from you, because I'm not going to guard you because you're not acting correctly. If you act correctly, I'll guard you and you'll have the land. It'll be yours. I mean, for a long, long time, the land wasn't ours. Right? We know throughout history. The land of Israel, the Turks were there, the Christians were there, all different people were there, Arabs were there, but we weren't there. It was, even though God gave it to us, we weren't there. Right? Moshe, right, was a special person. Like when the average person would do something, would be living in Israel, and they do something wrong, so they would have to leave. Now, that's what happened if the Jewish people, we'd be thrown out of the land. Like today, we're thrown out of the land of Israel, even though we have it. We don't have a Jewish commonwealth with a temple. Right? We've been sent out to live like we are. If Moshe would go into the land of Israel, he was on a different spiritual level. When you and I say something, it could happen or it might not happen. When Moshe would say something, it would definitely happen. So if Moshe would bring the Jewish people into Israel, it says that the Jewish people couldn't leave Israel. It wouldn't be possible. So when God got mad at the Jewish people and destroyed the temple, God basically said, I'm going to take out my anger on the temple rather than on you, because I'm upset with you. I'm not going to take out my anger on you, but I'm going to make you leave. Right? He couldn't have made them leave if Moshe had brought them in, because when Moshe brings them in, then they always have to stay. That's a rule. So when God says to Moshe, I want you to look at the land of Israel, and you can't go, it's not being cruel. He's saying that Moshe, if I let you bring the Jewish people in, and they do something wrong, they're going to have to be punished, because I can't send them out. So now I can send them out. He says, but there's one thing I want you to do. I want that throughout history, a Jew should want to go to the land of Israel. Jews should want to be there. And when you stand on this mountain and you see the land of Israel and you want to be there, right? You cry to be there, then throughout history, all Jews will be the same. And we know that throughout history, Jews have stood in Poland and Lithuania, they stood in Spain, they stood in Ethiopia, all around the world, and they wanted to go to Israel. And they couldn't go, and it bothered them. This feeling comes from Moshe. That Moshe wanted to go to the land of Israel and he couldn't go. So God caused him to have that feeling by looking at it. And when that happens, whatever Moshe does lasts forever. It's eternal. So Moshe has that feeling affects us. So that when we look at the land of Israel, we want to go there. And we can't always go there. So it bothers us. And with him, it bothered him. And throughout history, the Jewish people have always wanted to go. So it's not a question of God being cruel. God wants that Jews should want to go to Israel. So by having Moshe do this, it caused within all Jews, part of our spiritual DNA, that we should want to go to Israel. So now at the bottom of this page, God tells Moshe, like I said, you go up in the mountain and look, and then you're going to die. So go and pick a leader to take over for you. I want you to pick somebody. And Moshe says, I can't pick anyone. Now actually he could. According to a Midrash, he actually wanted Pinchas to be the next leader. Because Pinchas had all the attributes that he felt a good leader should have. But he was wrong. He wouldn't have been the best leader because of the way he acted so zealously, and he killed those people. That's not always best for the Jewish people, right? If you have a zealot, they're very difficult to live with. You have to live with somebody who's always telling you what's right and what's wrong, and someone always taking extreme opinions and saying this is what we have to do. It might be great for them spiritually, but it's hard to live with such a person. Right? And Pinchas, if he was going to be the leader of the Jews, he wasn't going to understand the Jews who are weak. I can't learn, I can't do this, I can't do that, it's too hard for me. Right? And he would just get angry at them. But Yoshua was a different personality. So God told Moshe, you might want to have Pinchas, but you're not going to have him. So he tells Moshe, then you pick someone for me. So he picks Yoshua and Ben Nun. Yoshua becomes the next leader of the Jewish people, and he's to take over for Moshe as soon as Moshe dies. And he would lead the people into Israel and lead them the same way. The Talmud says that the Jews were embarrassed by Yoshua because he was only as great as the moon, while Moshe was as great as the sun. That's what the Midrash says. That Moshe was so glorified and so amazing, he was like the sun. Right? It was so beautiful and so powerful you can't even look at it. But the moon is a reflection. It's powerful, it's big, but it's not like the sun. And that's how Yeshua was to Moshe. But nevertheless, he was the next closest thing, and he takes over for Moshe. And here God picks him. And he says, Hashem says to Moshe, take to yourself Yeshua the son of Nun, a man in whom there is spirit, and lean your hand upon him. You shall stand him before Elazar the Kohen and before the entire assembly, and command him before their eyes. You shall place some of your majesty upon him, so the entire assembly of Israel will pay heed. Before Elazar the Kohen shall he stand, who shall inquire of him of the judgment of the Urim before Hashem, and his words shall they go out, and so forth. So he does this, and Yeshua is now going to be taking over as soon as Moshe stops. He becomes the next leader. And we now go into a section of this entire thing of Pinchas, which describes the sacrifices, and primarily the sacrifices offered in the temple, that are communal sacrifices, primarily for holidays. So that's why when you come to shul on a holiday, you read a part of the story of Pinchas. You read the part about the sacrifices, because it'll say on the holiday of Passover you have to offer this sacrifice, on the holiday of Sukkot you offer this one. So whatever holiday you're in, you read that part, and that's what it's doing here. But one of the very interesting ones is it talks about a korban tamid. A korban tamid is not a sacrifice for a holiday. It is a sacrifice that's communal, that is to say that the nation pays for it. You don't pay for it yourself and let them do it. It's paid for by the nation. And it's offered every single day. Tamid means constant or consistent. So every day you have to offer this. Right? It's called this sacrifice. Other sacrifices you offer one if you sin by mistake. You can offer a sacrifice because it's a special day of the week, or it's a Shabbos, or it's a Musaf. Right? But the fact is that to offer a sacrifice every day, right, you're talking about one that is quite mundane. So you're talking about one that fulfills, like, for instance, like the morning service. So that's every day. So that's the tamid, right, the regular one. So the commentaries tell us that the truth is that in the middle of the statement, it tells you that you have all of the sacrifices. Then right in the middle it says, and this sacrifice, which was originally given on Mount Sinai, and then it goes back to describing the sacrifice. So the commentaries want to know, why does it tell you in the middle? It only gives you a history lesson in the middle of a story which has nothing to do with the story. And the answer is because there's good and bad things about a sacrifice that's called the tamid. Because the tamid means that every single day you offer this no matter what. Right? And what we learn is that human beings get used to anything. As I said before with the doctor, you can get used to anything. But what happens is sometimes when you get used to something, you start doing it by rote. Like one of the big problems that we talk about are people who pray without thinking about what they're doing. You have to pray 3 times a day, so you go to pray, and your mind's on business, or you're not thinking about it, or you want to get through it, so you don't think about the words. Right? To pray without meaning is really useless. It's a waste, because prayer is based on your feelings. But you fulfilled it, and it's just not a very good way of doing it. The way that happens is, of course, if you pray every single day without making it fresh, the end result is that it gets boring and you start doing it poorly. So it tells you here in the middle of this paragraph, it says the first sacrifice for this was offered on Mount Sinai, to tell you that every time you offer this sacrifice, you should treat it like the first time that it was offered on Mount Sinai. It's like you ever go to shul. Today we had a bris, but tomorrow we have a bar mitzvah. If you come to our bar mitzvah tomorrow, you'll see it's going to take the bar mitzvah boy 10 minutes to put on his tefillin. I put my tefillin on in like 20 seconds. He does it in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Right? And he's got the straps are perfectly spaced. Right? Everything is like exact. Right? He's so proud. He's now a man. He gets to wear tefillin, and he does it just perfectly. It takes a long time. Right? After a couple of weeks, he does it in his sleep. Right? He doesn't even think about it. He just puts it on, boom, he's done. What happened to this kid who cared so much and did it so well and did it with such thought? Where did he go? He got used to it. So when we say, in order to say to you that you should always have proper concentration if you put on tefillin, but be like the bar mitzvah boy. So I'm telling you, if you want to pray is every day, just like the sacrifice is every day. But the sacrifice says this sacrifice should be like the sacrifice offered on Mount Sinai. That was the first time we offered it, and there it was special. So too, it should always be that special for us. So too, when we do mitzvahs, we should always make them special for us. They should always be like new, not like you're doing it all the time. When you say Birkat Hamazon, do you just mumble it and don't think about the words, or do you say it with meaning? And you make challah, and you're going to take challah. Do you think about what you're doing, or you just say it and move on? I mean, too often we just say it and move on with whatever we're doing, and we can't do that. We have to really make an effort to try to treat everything like it's the first time, like it's never happened before. That happens here. It goes through all the different sacrifices for all the different holidays. And it concludes by saying, V'yomer Moshe el bnei Yisrael. Moshe says to the Jewish people, Kol asher tziva Hashem es Moshe. Right? It says that everything that God told Moshe to do, the Jews did. Right? And all the sacrifices and everything was set up. And then we are now taken to a new section, where, just so historically you understand, where are we here? The Jews are standing at the edge of the land of Israel. They're about to go into the land. From here until the end of the book, and the end of the Torah, where they would enter the land, is all very fast. It just seems like, it must be a long time. It's not. It's a very short time. But all of these things are told. The entire last book of the Torah is in a very short time. And we're getting right to the edge. Here Moshe is standing on a mountain, and he's looking into the land of Israel. He doesn't have a telescope, right? He's looking. So you're talking that he's 5 kilometers away, like close enough to see it. So you can understand now that they're right on the edge, and they're about to go in. And all of these things are happening to them in the last few hours, so to speak, of their stay. And so we continue on with that. So now, the next number of weeks, it's going to change. We're not going to have as many stories as we had here with all these interesting characters, but there's some interesting things to learn, and we will meet next week. After that, we're not going to meet for a couple of weeks. I go away, and people go away, so we're going to stop for a little while, and we'll start, but we will meet next week and continue, and then we'll start again for the month of Elul. The month of Elul will be around the 2nd or 3rd week of August, so we'll be off a couple of weeks. This is usually customary in the summer, so that people can get away, and then we'll start again and go right up until the holidays, and then break for a bit, and then start again after the holidays. But here, so next week we have 2 parshas. It's a double parsha, Matos and Masa. They're both sort of short, and they're both similar in concept, so you can tie them together well. And we'll also spend a little bit of time talking about the 9 days in Tisha B'Av, because we're almost there. We're now about 9 days from the 9 days, and then Tisha B'Av is about a little more than 2 weeks away, and rapidly approaching. So Of course, if we're going to fast, we might as well try to understand it a bit better so we can feel it. Right? We don't want to fast with no feeling. Just like I said earlier, that the feeling is what makes it important. It says right we read a Haftorah on fast days, and it says in there, God says, I don't want your fasting. I don't want your blood, that comes from fasting. I want your heart. I want you to feel. And that's really what the significant thing is. Okay? So, and for those who are in shul on the weekend, we have our third part of our Make Tisha B'Av Obsolete program. We're going to talk about a new area, and that's judging people favorably, which is a very misunderstood mitzvah, because most people think it means that you have to judge everyone favorably, and because of it, you don't, because it makes no sense. If I come and I borrow money from you, and you lend me money, and then I don't pay you back, and I come back to you a month later and say I want to borrow more money, do you judge me favorably and say, oh, okay, it must have been an extraordinary circumstance, he didn't pay me back, so I'll lend him again? That's like telling you to be stupid, right? Don't worry, just because a guy's gone to jail 5 times for theft, you have to judge him favorably. That's definitely not what it means when it says to judge someone favorably.